Hi everyone, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and after a long absence, I am back again because I have just finished up the Tales of the Dominion War, which, if you don't know, is a wonderful short story anthology series. 12 great short stories written by some fantastic Trek authors, just covering some different parts of the war. Uh, just interesting little tidbits, little things that maybe you wanted to know about, things you didn't know about, things that you got to learn about. What was the Enterprise doing? What were these people doing? You get to find that all out in Tales of the Dominion War. Tales of the Dominion War was published in 2004, and of course was kind of put together by Keith R.A. DeCandido, but features so many great Trek authors. So we'll get into all the different authors that are included in this 12-part short story series. But for now, let's just jump into the back cover here. For 2 seasons, Star Trek Deep Space Nine chronicled the intense struggle of the Federation, fighting alongside the Klingons and the Romulans against the overwhelming forces of the Dominion in some of the most exciting hours of television ever produced. Very good stuff, I agree. Now, for the first time, see how the Dominion War has affected the entirety of the Star Trek universe, from the heart of the Federation to the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. From the front lines of Klingon space to the darkest recesses of the Romulan Empire, from the heroic members of the Starfleet Corps of Engineers to the former crew of the USS Stargazer, from the edge of the new frontier, capitalized, to the corridors of Station Deep Space Nine, TM. Some of the finest Star Trek novelists have been gathered to provide a dozen new tales from this seminal period in galactic history. Heroes from 3 generations: Sisko, Picard, Spock, Kira, Calhoun, Clegg, McCoy, Gold, and so many more, brought together in these Tales of the Dominion War. So anyway, some of the authors included here, we've got Greg Cox, Peter David, Keith R.A. DeCandido, Michael Jan Friedman, Dave Galanter, Robert Greenberger, Heather Jarman and Jeffrey Lang, David Mack, Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangles, Joseph Sherman and Susan Schwartz, Dayton Ward and Kevin Dillmore, and of course, the wonderful Howard Weinstein. So, wow, like seriously, a great collection of stories. I had a blast with it. Kind of took my time reading it. So anyway, I was reading The Battle of Beta Z previous to this, and then I took a little bit of a Trek break and I read the 3rd Dark Tower book. But picked this up on the 27th of June and finished it just today. And really, like I said, really just enjoyed these little tidbits. And it was fun just getting so many different styles of writing, different ways of telling a story, all in one fun little book. So definitely something I would recommend. I recommend everything that I ever talk about on this channel. But I guess to go into more detail, if you enjoyed DS9 and the Dominion War, this will fill in a lot of those little gaps, tell you little things that maybe you were wondering about. And for me, it's kind of teased a lot of little things that are coming for me in the future, because a lot of these short stories featured characters from books and series that I have not even got close to reading yet. So the whole Starfleet Corps of Engineers, the Stargazer series, New Frontiers, and everything that has to do with that. So this was fun just to kind of get a little taste of all those things, and still had plenty of like the classic, Trek that I'm used to as well. So the other great thing about this book is that the wonderful, gigantic book about books goes into such fantastic detail on this, where basically the author Jeff Ayers here, went and interviewed each individual author about each short story. So if you want more information about that, and of course any of these books, this thing is just tops. It is just wonderful. It gives you so much backstory and just, and we'll go into that too as we get into this a little bit more. So, all right. So before we just jump into talking about each story and kind of what I thought about it, I would just say one more time, a very fun little book. Well, I don't know, fun is the way to put it. It's a war story. It's a collection of war stories, but just a very well done anthology. Fills in a lot of blanks and features some of the greatest Trek authors that are out there. So, I mean, what do you have to lose? Nothing. It's perfect, and it made me want to find more Trek books like this, more collections, because just the little short stories were very fun. So anyway, I think that I took some pretty decent notes on this, so we'll kind of jump right into each individual story here. And again, there were 12 stories in total, and I think that the way that the editor put the book together was done very well too, because it seemed to kind of build up where like the more like the action oriented stuff kind of came towards the end, and just it felt like it was put together in a very good way. So, all right, the first short story in the book here, What Dreams May Come, written by Michael Jan Friedman. So this was just a nice kind of simple little, like a sampler, like an opening basically, where they give you this little story about this Vorta named Sigil, who basically him and the Dominion have landed on this planet and established like an outpost there. The people there were like pre-warp, but it turns out that there was a kind of a undercover Starfleet research agent there. So it's just an interesting little story where kind of like this Vorta's kind of talking about how he's got it easy on this planet and everything's just going so good for him. But then at the end of the story, it's revealed that the Vorta's kind of chief servant is actually this Galad Benzoma, who was Picard's first officer on the Stargazer. And in the end, the Enterprise comes in and is able to disable the vessel in the planet's atmosphere, and they're able to take out that little team there. So it's just kind of like a little teaser to get you into this. Then the next story, very interesting, Night of the Vulture by Greg Cox. And this is, it's also, when they give you these stories, they tell you where they're placed within the series. So I'll try to remember that. The first one was placed between the like 6th and 7th seasons of DS9, and this one was placed during the episode Favor the Bold. And I thought this was really cool too, because this featured a Cardassian spy who's disguised as a human arriving at Earth to pick up a changeling spy who had somehow stolen the codes to the DS9 wormhole minefield. And he had to get this changeling spy back to Dominion territory so they could take down the minefield, right? But the founder there, the changeling, is kind of like pushing the Cardassian too much back and forth. And what they don't know is that they're being kind of influenced and pushed forth by the Beta 12A entity from the Star Trek TOS episode Day of the Dove. So this guy thing is like something that feeds on war and feeds on that. So he kind of pushes them into fighting each other, which is what they do, and even like materializes a disruptor into the Cardassian captain's hands, and he's able to turn that onto the changeling. And it's just a very interesting story about kind of like the tension between Cardassians and the founders, and that's kind of what the author was going for too. And again, I should reference this too, because they tell so much about what the author was thinking. So this one was actually something that was going to be part of the Q continuum, which is Greg Cox wrote the Q continue. So that's TNG numbered 47, 48, 49, right? I'm almost there. I got a few to get there. I'm going to get there soon. But he was going to put something like that into that book, saved it, and was asked to do this anthology, had this story ready for that. So that was an interesting little one. Now here, the next one is the whole reason kind of why I jumped into this in the first place. The Ceremony of Innocence is Drowned. And this was written by the man who put the whole thing together, Keith R.A. Candido. And this is giving the perspective from Oksana Troy as the Dominion invades Beta Z. So this one was just like a very kind of scary one because she's just there in her home talking with her friends when all of a sudden like all hell breaks loose, and like the place is invaded and their defenses are woefully inadequate for the Dominion, and basically they're just kind of crushed immediately. So, and it was interesting when I read this, I was like, wow, this is kind of a deep thing. And then when I read the what the author was thinking, and this was actually something that he wrote as like a post 9/11 catharsis story for him. And when I thought about the story again after reading that, I could totally see a lot of that in there, because there was a lot of just like building collapse and just like awful things. And once I read that, I could kind of see what the author was doing there. And again, that was a very interesting story too, very dark, and an interesting kind of opening then to the previous novel I read, The Battle of Beta Z. So, all right, next one, Blood Sacrifice, and this was, oh yes, the Spock tale. All right, so Blood Sacrifice tells a story about how the Romulan Praetor or whatever was assassinated, and then Spock is going to work with this other character, this Romulan defector, where is that? Ruanek, okay? And he is featured in Vulcan's Forge, Vulcan's Heart, other books I haven't read. So again, more fun teasers for things that I'm going to get to see in the future and read in the future. But anyway, in Blood Sacrifice, Spock is working with Ruanek to find the true culprit behind who killed the Romulan Praetor. And they're able to kind of solve the mystery and track down the killer. And there's a fun scene at the Romulan fire falls at the end. And then that kind of plays into the whole, I guess, the Romulans joining the war effort as well. Like, that's kind of part of that whole thing as well. Oh, the next one maybe was one of my favorite ones. Maybe top 3. I think at the end we'll go back and kind of talk about the order. But Mirror Eyes. So Mirror Eyes was the MASH episode, which is how I'm describing it now because that's what I read when they were talking about it. That's kind of what they were actually going for. So you had this fully doctor-centric episode where, and also the fun part about the story is that it's told through log entries of a Romulan spy who's posing as a Vulcan. So through these log entries, you have this spy posing as a Vulcan who is working with Dr. Bashir and Dr. Crusher on Deep Space Nine to solve this Vulcan scourge crisis that's coming through. And the spy is just kind of trying to work a way to get out of there. But just so much good stuff in this story here. And just an interesting collaboration. It was between Heather Jarman and Jeffrey Lang. And I don't think I've read much of anything they've ever done before. But what was fun about this short story is it's able to work in all 5 of the current doctors at that time. Because by the end of the story, they had a part where they had the EMH in. They had to contact old McCoy to get some information from him. And at the very end, they revealed that the part of what they were able to solve was because of something that Dr. Phlox had done before. So there you had Crusher, Bashir, McCoy, Phlox, and the EMH all in one short story. So I thought that one was a lot of fun too. I really enjoyed that. So, okay, next, Twilight's Wrath, short story by David Mack, telling how Shinzan rose to power in the kind of the Romulan Empire, and also how he discovered B4. So this is a cool little story that kind of gives just a fun little preface to Nemesis, really, and it kind of tells and really just kind of shows his skill and his strategy and everything that he's able to do to outwit the kind of like, since he's with the Remans. Remember, he's with the Remans, not really the Romulans, and the Romulans consider the Remans to be basically just garbage and disposable people. So he's able to outwit the Romulans, and with his crew of Remans, kind of secure this great victory for the Romulan Empire, and also secure B4. So it's an interesting story, and it just gives a little bit more history into Shinzan, who honestly I like. I like Nemesis. It is a good movie. It's fun. It's not bad, and I think Tom Hardy did a good job as the clone of Picard. So I did enjoy this one as well. So, oh, okay. Now we're getting into the real good stuff. Real good stuff. And again, like I feel like they did kind of like they picked it up so that it just became more and more exciting as you got to the end. This one, 11 Hours Out by Dave Galanter. Okay? And I think I've read some of his stuff before too. Or maybe I will. I don't know. But this was very well done. So this is kind of telling you where was the Enterprise, what was the crew of the Enterprise doing during the Dominion War. And this is one of the stories. And it also follows up on something which I think I kind of even forgot about, was the Breen attack on San Francisco during the Dominion War. So, and it was interesting because that was a parallel, the author was saying, to like the Pearl Harbor attack as well. So just some very interesting kind of things that they did there between those two, stories. So, but this story was very, very cool. It told kind of two different things. First off, Picard was in San Francisco at the time of this attack, so it's telling kind of what he was doing to help out during that. And of course, he kind of takes command of the whole situation, and just some very good stuff. And you get to meet his niece there as well. There's also a bit of stuff on the Enterprise as well, where they're trying to get back and they're like stuck and they can't get back in time. So just a very fun story here. And I just felt like I liked the stuff with Picard kind of taking command of the situation after everything had kind of gone to hell there. So, okay, so Safe Harbors. Oh yeah, this was Howard Weinstein's. Oh, this was really fun too. So this was Howard Weinstein, and he was telling a story of Scotty and McCoy. But Scotty and McCoy during the Dominion War. So you've got Scotty out of his, transporter accident that he was in, and of course a very elderly McCoy here. But they are kind of on a mission to check different hospitals and things, and they're going around in a runabout, and their runabout has some trouble. So they have to set down at the nearest place where they can get some help, which is a kind of a neutral planet. And then they're also met. There's another Starfleet ship that comes in too, which has seen like a lot of trouble and had like a lot of death basically. And it's an interesting story because the planet at first is like, the leader says, we'll give you 3 hours. After 3 hours, you gotta go. The 3 hours are up, they go. And then they're confronted by some incoming Breen ships, So once you see these ships coming in, they realize that they're not equipped to deal with them, but then they're called back to the planet, and the planet is able to give them, safe harbor. Safe Harbor, name of the short story, until the Breen or whatever pass. They're able to repair their vessels, and this was also just a very well done book. I love pretty much anything by Howard Weinstein. I've read, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of his books probably, and they've all been very good. And he does a very good, just very good characterization, I guess, you know. But this one is told from the perspective of McCoy, which is fun, and just I like how he did it, and it was just an interesting kind of a different view at what these people were doing during the war. So, oh, okay. So now, Field Expediency by Dayton Ward and Kevin Dillmore. So now we are getting into something that I've never got into before, which is the Corps of Engineers. And this was, I guess, a series of like ebooks or something, which I think they eventually did put on to a regular book. But I don't have, or nor have I seen any of that I can think of. So that's something that's going to be coming down the road. I'll look into that. But this was a fun little story, kind of telling a story of this team of engineers aboard the USS Da Vinci, and they are sent to pull out this device from a crashed Breen ship. And this is some sort of new, like, encoding device, so they need to get it out, and they've been sent there with the help of the Starfleet intelligence crew as well. So they tell the story through basically these 4 characters, Duffy and Stevens, who are the engineers, and then I think it's Havret and Rondon, who are like the intelligence agents there on the field. So the 4 of them are down there trying to get this equipment out of the Breen ship. The Breen arrive into orbit. The ship, the Da Vinci has to leave. So now you have like the classic scenario of like away team versus away team on the ground, while the other ships are doing their space battle thing up here. So just again, a fun and well done book. No, short story that focused on the engineers kind of doing their thing to save the day. So, you know, setting up a motion detector or repairing this or repairing that, doing something like that. So that was cool, and it really made me look forward to getting into reading more about the the SCE novels there. So, oh, okay, now a drink for Clegg. I would say the next one was probably my favorite. A song well sung by Robert Greenberger. So, Robert Greenberger tells the story of Clegg. And Clegg, if you'll remember, was in the TNG episode, gosh, what was it? Matter of Honor, something like that, where Riker went to the Klingon vessel and the Klingon first officer came to the Enterprise. But anyway, this tells the story of Clegg and his kind of battle with the Dominion. And it is just a very, very cool Klingon story, where it picks up where he's crash landed on this planet after this vicious battle with the Breen and the Jem'Hadar, and he's got one arm. He just realizes he's got one arm, and he's got no crew left. Everybody else on the ship is dead. He's able to get kind of minimal sensors working, and he sees that there is a downed Jem'Hadar ship, and he sees life signs, and he goes and he hunts down 7 Jem'Hadar and a Vorta with one arm, takes them all out, and just, I mean, that's a very good story. Just a very cool, a very hype story. I don't know how else to say it. Just like you feel very hype for Clegg. You think he's gonna die at the end too, but no, he doesn't. So, and Clegg is a character that is in Diplomatic Implausibility, which is a TNG numbered novel, which I'll be reading sometime in the future. So, again, I'm kind of getting little hints of things that I'm going to know about or see in the future. So, alright, we're getting down to the final 2 That was number 10. Number 11 was Stone Cold Truths by Peter David. Um, so this was interesting. This was based on the Star Trek New Frontiers series, again, which I've never read at all. But I liked that it was told from the story of the Brickar member of the New Frontiers series. And of course, the Brickar are from, well, the only time you've ever seen a Brickar is, of course, in Star Trek Prodigy, and save Star Trek Prodigy. But anyway, Rok-Tahk from Star Trek Prodigy is a Brickar, but the Brickar originated in this novel series, New Frontier, and this story is told by basically this Brickar character, and I will find the name of the character, Zach Hebron, okay, who's telling a story to his son 150 years after the war has ended. And he tells his son kind of like a tall tale, and then his son's teacher comes and kind of like calls him out on it, where he then calls his son's teacher out on glorifying war, basically, where he tells him kind of the true story where there was no glory. But interestingly enough, in this story, and I don't know if this ever comes up again, but the author mentions that because of the lie that Sisko told the Romulans, that led to the next Romulan Earth War. So that's just something they say in this one story. But I thought that was pretty interesting that he threw that out there. So again, that was another fun one. The final one, which was Requital, written by Michael Martin and Andy Mangels, is an interesting little story that tells about Reese, who is a survivor of AR 558, which was basically a place that the Federation had to defend for, I think, something like 5 or 6 months. A great episode of DS9 was based on that, the Siege of AR 558. But it just follows this character, Reese, and then this other character, this Cardassian, Glyn Akor, and their plan to assassinate the female founder, basically right at the end of the DS9 series. Just because of their hate and everything that they went through. So, and it also gives like a little interesting inside look into Sisko's mind as well, and like kind of what he was thinking and what was going on with him, and him still being kind of stuck in the Saratoga at the Battle of Wolf 359. So, it's kind of an interesting ending, I guess. I think my favorite out of the stories definitely was the song Well Sung. And then probably, if I would have to say, number 2, 11 Hours Out, followed by Safe Harbors. After that, it would be kind of hard to rank them down from there. But just all in all, what a fun little slice. And a chance to see all these different authors' takes, on the Dominion War, just different takes on different little things that were going on. So I had a lot of fun with it. Again, if you are interested in DS9, if you're interested in Dominion War, here is 12 more stories which will give you a little bit more backstory. And then here in this book, you can have backstory on the backstory on the backstory, stories about the stories and books about the books. I mean, what else could you want? So, but with that, I'm going to bring this episode here to a close, and I will say that I am happily diving back into the TNG numbered series. And we're back with a brand new spine with a little stripe on the number. I know it's all new, it's different, but we'll be fine. We're going to be jumping in with Brad Ferguson's The Last Stand next. We'll hit 3 of those before we switch up to something else. But, yeah, that was fun. So anyway, as always, everybody, thank you so much for sitting here and chatting with me for near 30 minutes about a Star Trek book. As always, live long and prosper. And we will see you all in the next one. Bye.